Thank you, Richard. I'll be equally brief in my introduction. I did want to start out with something historical. The next time that you drive over the Dames Point Bridge, take a look at it just before you go over on the south side. What's the actual name for the Dames Point Bridge? Does anybody here know what the real name is? Yeah. Napoleon Bonaparte Broward Bridge. Napoleon Bonaparte Broward was our speaker's great-grandfather. So to give you an idea as to how deep the family history in good government goes in this state, it's an honor tonight to be able to introduce my friend and the Chief Financial Officer of the state of Florida, Jeff Atwater. Jeff grew up in Palm Beach County and went to the University of Florida, got his undergrad and graduate degree at UF. He went to work for a bank that we both worked for, and I've never introduced someone who took my job before either. But when I worked at the bank in Palm Beach County, and Jeff came down from Jacksonville and swooped in and cleaned up the mess I had left at Palm Beach County. He went on to run the bank in St. Lucie and then run the bank in Broward County, and then came back to run the Palm Beach County Bank after it was acquired by what's today known as Bank of America. So he's got an extensive background in finance. I know that he's a good credit man, he's a good banker, and he brought those kind of skills with him to the financial office of the state of Florida. And you could not find a finer public servant than Jeff Atwater, because he is honest, he says what he really means, he'll tell you something that you can understand, and as we were joking around earlier, after he talks tonight, you'll actually remember what he said. It's just, he believes that the principal role of government is to create the conditions where individuals, families, and businesses are given every opportunity to flourish. Hard work, the value of education, commitment to the Judeo-Christian ethics, belief in the promise of America are to be encouraged and rewarded, not stymied by an overreaching government, but supported by great public servants like my friend Jeff Atwater. Thank you.
Thanks so much, David, thank you. It was very kind of you to share that. I did follow David in 1991. I went down to the Barnett Bank of Palm Beach County to follow in his footsteps, and there were absolutely no messes. There was nothing to clean up. It was a high-performing player, and that's why David, the reason I filled his spot is he became one of our presidents of the Barnett Bank. So it was filled because of his accomplishments, not because they wanted him to go. So congratulations on that move. And just let me share one thing on Napoleon Bonaparte Broward, and then I want to dive in because I know our time is limited tonight. But he was a fourth grade educated tugboat captain on the St. Johns River here, and his house still exists on Heckscher Drive on the way up to you might say Amelia Island, that route up to Fernandina. Go over the ferry and take a right, and it's just all on the left. And so he was a tugboat captain, but he believed deeply in freedom and liberty and giving people a chance. And at the time, in about 1897, the people of Cuba were fighting for liberation from Spain, and so he started running guns to the freedom fighters that were on the island. The American government did not like it. They kept impounding his tugboat, which was known as the Three Friends, but he kept it up, and he made about 25 trips through the Spanish blockades. The Spaniards put a price tag on his head for $25,000 to sink the Three Friends. He kept going, and even in some places in history it's written as Broward's War, because he kept funneling ammunition and then running fighters across the straits to get to Cuba. Well, finally, the Maine is sunk. America now dives in. And we happen to have a individual that went to Cuba, charged the wrong hill, and became president of the United States. And so President Roosevelt, who later becomes president, just a few years later, becomes president of the United States after a tragedy, the loss of the president, he decides to make a trip to Florida, and he comes to Florida, and he wants to meet the governor of Florida, who is now Napoleon Bonaparte Broward, the tugboat captain. And he wants to say to him, he says, look, Mr. Broward, you know, frankly, you've got a 4th grade education. You have absolutely no pedigree for this job. If it hadn't been for that tugboat, you'd never be governor. And he said, well, in all due respect, if it hadn't been for my tugboat, you wouldn't be president. So that is, that's our one family story. Richard, it is good to be here. So thank you for the Institute's invitation. And I came because I have known Rich for a long, long time. And I knew when he began telling me the members of the board that came together to help design and begin to put forward to the university and frankly to the people of the state and beyond this institute of the incredible quality that would be represented here. So thank you for the invitation and thank you for what you've created. I believe, as you believe, that it's going to make a significant difference to the quality of life of Florida and beyond. And think of all the places that will make a difference in every community across Florida where you will begin to disperse yourselves and pursue your professional careers. Congratulations for you making this choice to participate and to see this as a pathway that will create value to your life and the value that you'll be able to give back to your communities. And to the faculty, thank you for having made yet another choice of participating in this institute and the difference you're now going to be making by imparting the knowledge and the experiences to the students. So thank you to all. So all of the board members, thank you too. So I'd like to share some things, and I know we're on a tight schedule, but I believe that Rick nailed it when he said the consequence, because I'm going to show you just 3 different slides today. They're going to go in motion, so it'll look like more than 3 slides. But the point would be is that each of our decisions has consequences, whether it's in public policy or it's in private life, in building an enterprise, in building any enterprise. Nothing happens by accident. Over the long haul, the brand you establish, the value proposition you create, where you're going to compete, you will make choices. You're going to allocate very precious resources. And then, hopefully, you will have decided to measure those choices, take note, adjust, and perform. But that's still what it all comes down to in building an extraordinary enterprise. Public policy is no different. Whether it's going to be at a national or state or county or a city or a school district or a special tax, whatever it is, the same expectations. You will be bound by your Constitution. You'll be bound by the authority that you were given. You'll be bound by your charter, the authority that you have been extended, and hopefully you will live within those bounds. That's a whole other conversation for a whole different evening. But we are one of 50 states. It is our responsibility, those of us today that have given just a brief window based upon term limits, which I happen to support as a public policy, to try to offer what we can from our life experiences and the wisdom and the judgment and what we will learn to make the decisions, to make those choices of consequence. In this country, under this governance, we seek, and we have said this in our own Constitution, to champion the human spirit. That's who we are, this system of ours. So it is under that mindset that I'd like to present you with some choices that we made as a state, because we're competing with 50 other states to see, can we attract intellectual capital? Can we attract financial capital? Can we make this place of Florida the most prosperous place for individuals to believe that their dreams can come true? That's very complex because it takes healthy environment itself. It takes healthy lifestyles. It takes safe streets. It takes quality education. It takes many things. But have you decided you're going to create the place for the long and enduring time that people can be prosperous? So, first thing I'm going to show you is going to look like numbers, and it is numbers, but you got to stick with me till the end, okay? Because whether or not the decisions we make, the disciplines that we have, the role that we see ourselves responsible for, how disciplined were we in following through? And did we understand in a competitive field what will ultimately attract personal income? 70% of GDP in this country is made when one of you opens your wallet. When one of you chooses to take your personal income and save, take your personal income and invest, or take your personal income and buy. 70% of the GDP. That is robust economic activity takes place because you believe you're in a place that respects who you are, what you do, and your career path, and where you want to go. Also matters that we're not extracting from the whole model cost that isn't necessary, cost that's not adding any value to anything, because that'll ultimately be back on your back. So let's start. I'm going to try to give you in each of these slides enough of a horizon to see the consequence of the decision. Here what we have, let me just give you, on the y-axis is going to be net tax supported state debt as a percentage. On the x-axis you're going to have state taxes per capita. What we have extracted from you state by state, state taxes per capita, and it could be personal income, it could be sales tax driven, whatever it is in that state. What you then have plotted in 2004 is where each state would have fallen its state debt as a percentage of the aggregate income in that state, up the y, and across the x, the percentage of the per capita taxes it was extracting from the household. The size of the circle represents that state's percentage of your income that's going to cover its debt. Okay? So that's where you have. Now that's where you have Florida in 2004. Now, I think you can get the picture. Again, with your resources, you still want safe streets, quality education, environment that's enduring, but you've got to make some choices here. Okay? So, if you could somehow do that for a little extraction of the wallet in future debt on the children and grandchildren, that's where you would like to be. But there's a place to play here where you don't want to be. You're competing with 49 other states here. Okay? So, let me give you a look at who some of these players are. Now, it's tough to compete with Hawaii. They're not getting off the island easily, okay? But I just want to give you a sense here, because I know you're probably wondering what are all the dots, but a few of these will matter mostly as peers, because it's some cases you're making decisions. What are your peers doing? You would do that in industry. What are your peers doing? The complexity of what you're dealing with in the enterprise. So, Texas, Florida, California, New Jersey, Illinois, New York are primarily our peer group by size. But you can see a few other players. So here's where they're at. Are they taxing? Are they indebting the future? So I just want to give you, this is 2004. Let's put this in motion. 2005. Economy's growing, things are happening. Let me stop. Everybody was seeming to move in the same direction, okay? Things were rather prosperous. Remember, for us, our primary tax is sales tax driven. 80% of the revenue that comes to the state is when you buy a washer and dryer. Other states may have personal income taxes. Only 5 of us don't have a personal income tax. Florida is one state without a personal income tax. Okay, so everything was moving that direction. Things start to change. Now, we're moving through that very difficult period of the downturn. People are heading backwards, retreating. It's kind of where we all find ourselves back. You saw most of those bubbles moving back. People weren't moving, people weren't spending, people were holding themselves down. Here comes an interesting point. I want you to watch this one closely. Susie, watch this one closely. Here you are. Now, 2010, things are going to start to turn. What choices will they make? State of Florida, at this point, has a letter from the S&P saying, your housing market's crumbled, your revenue has fallen $7 billion, 500,000 houses are in foreclosure. Instead of stable, we're going to take you to a negative outlook, and in all likelihood, in 6 months, we'll downgrade you. So we have to make choices now. And your brand with a AAA credit rating is, that's who you are. It's not just your sunshine. People look and see, are you responsible? So we had to make some choices, but watch the choice. Florida's not moving. We're cutting corporate taxes. We're cutting spending. We're reducing debt. That's all going on in 10 to 12. Because where we want the money is not in Tallahassee, we want the money in the market. You'll decide when you can expand the shop, buy a piece of equipment, hire another neighbor. But all the other bubbles, where were they going? Up and out. Everybody was on a dead run the moment things turned. Here they are again. So everybody's now moved. If I'd have gone back to the first slide, California moved up and right, New York moved up and right, Illinois, there's a whole lot to say there. New Jersey moved up. That's the choice they made. So now there are only 3 states with us on the lowest possible tax to the burden of the household. We actually have, if I'd have gone back, our debt was about 3.5% and has moved back to just over 2% on personal income. So we've actually brought this down $4 billion between the time the side switched from 10 to 12. $4 billion we paid down. Now, why does this matter? Here are the states with a AAA credit rating. And by the way, I want to tell you, in 2011, S&P wrote us another letter. Unfortunately, we haven't got the Times Union to print this on the front page yet. The headline was, congratulations. We didn't think you could act that quickly with that discipline, with that tough choices. We didn't believe you could do it. We're taking you from negative back to stable, and we're going to keep reaffirming the AAA credit rating that you've had. Why does it matter? Is it any surprise where you would find the 16 states that hold a AAA credit rating? And let me show you this. Only Texas in our peer group holds a AAA credit rating. California, Illinois have a single A. I'll come back to the second. New York has a AA. There are 16 states with a AAA. There are 32 states with a AA, and there are 2 states, as you can see, with a single A. Why does this matter? New York. By the way, New York and Florida, 19.5 million people. We will surpass New York and become the 3rd most populous state in the union by the end of the year. Same population. Our annual budget, $70 billion. New York, $140 billion. Twice the size, same people. Florida's debt, $24 billion. New York's debt, $53 billion. If New York, and the whole point, let me just back on a second. The credit rating is like your personal credit score when you go to buy a car. What's your credit score? Then they kind of say, well, all right, we're now going to assign a rate to you. The differential between a AAA state and a AA state is about 25 basis points when you borrow the money. The difference between a AAA state and a single A state is about 85 basis points. Try to imagine 25 basis points on the difference between the 24 billion and the 53 billion. If New York had a AAA credit rating like Florida, instead of paying $6.7 billion annually in interest payment, they'd pay $4.7 billion. $1.4 billion for the choice they made to be AA. What can you buy with $1.4 billion every year? Not 1 year, every year. Tip, you could buy 28,000 K through 12 teachers. That's what you could buy for $1.4 billion. Their choice, however, is to have a budget twice the size of ours, debt twice the size of ours, and an unemployment rate, an unemployment fling. Okay, so that's the difference. Now, just for the schooling here, you cannot become single A on a bad quarter. S&P will only downgrade you to single A if over an extended period of time you have shown total irrational behavior. And they have achieved it. And, but imagine the consequence to the people of those states, the small business owners of those states, what they are carrying on their back. All right. Adjusted gross income. Adjusted gross income is what you are paid. That's what the IRS is looking for. It's on your W-2. It's the top line. What this wants to show you is where has adjusted gross income moved over the last 17 years. The last 17 years, the states in this, whatever we'll call this, kind of a purplish color, the states that have received domestically, not international, domestic transfer of adjusted gross income over the last 17 years are these states. The brand matters. Capital is appreciated. They know where to move. That's where they've gone. This blue is where it's gone. From, left, from, departed from. It's your GDP that you are kicking out your door. It's vitality, economics that you're choosing to depart you. Here they are. So, the number one state receiving adjusted gross income from everybody else, Florida. $105 billion of personal income has moved across state lines to choose Florida. You could add up Arizona, North Carolina, Texas, Georgia would be next, and we exceed all of that. The next four, we exceed. They chose us. They chose to come here. They saw this was the place where they could make it. And where are they fleeing? New York, California, Illinois, New Jersey. That's not sustainable. But remember what we just saw. That was across 17 years. We saw between 10 and 12, they didn't learn any lesson. That didn't even include what New York and California have done in 13 and 14 to encourage the departure of adjusted gross income. And with that is the intellectual capital. Those are the movers. Those are the shakers. Those are the people who believe they can do it. But they can't do it where they've been. So they're going to where they can. This just would show you these states are the ones that have the AAA credit rating and have been the recipient of adjusted gross income. Georgia, Florida, Texas, North Carolina. It is not a Southern thing, just in case you're confused. This is choices that people made. It is likely the philosophical thinking you may find in some of these states and their appreciation for their Constitution and for their role may be consistent, but is not the geography. Here would be the states that had again, the best adjusted gross income and credit rating, and those with the worst. It's not a mystery what choices are making. Okay, now, what I want to show you next, it's not about the money. 1992, let me set you up on your axis again. On the Y is the national score. This is the National Association of Educational Progress. It is not our choice. This is how our children perform to the national norm. Across the axis, the x-axis is going to be time. So just want to let you see how we're looking here. In 1992, Florida ranks third among our peers in performance. You want to be up to the top. You can see where all the peers perform to the nation. So just in relative terms, in 1992, if I had shown further, it was still coming down, okay? In this chart, we rank 44th in the country in fourth grade reading. Half of all fourth graders are illiterate by the fourth grade reading standard in 1992. For the previous 3 decades, Florida has increased K through 12 spending 2.5 times the growth rate of inflation because we love our kids so much. We cared so much. We will allow us to fall to 45th. I'm going to now start this across time, and what you're going to see pop up on the screen are choices we made, public policy decisions we made, that enough was enough, It wasn't about the money, it was about performance. It was about the outcome. Here we go. We've now fallen to 45th. So you're now approaching, by the way, it's that the National Education Evaluation Progress provides it every other year, and then there's a gap year that we don't have anything. But everything is on the board. We held back nothing. We didn't pick out best years every year, and then at some point it switched over here to the odd number year, okay? So 1998, we established the A+ plan. A lot of opinions on that. A lot of opinions from the editorial writers on this one. That meant every single school would have a set standard set by the state of Florida for Sunshine State Standards, which you have to learn in that grade, a tool to measure how it was done. You heard that word, FCAT. That the grades would be posted publicly, that every school would be graded and it would be shown, and if for 2 years in a row your school was an F, you could move your child, and that you could get a scholarship to move your child. You had choice. Seemed like a reasonable concept, but not everybody was all that enthused. Here's what happens. Then we brought the McKay Scholarship in for children with learning disabilities. Then we offered a tax credit scholarship that if you were below the poverty level and a corporation wanted to give to a foundation, the foundation could provide you a choice. You can go to a school of your choice. Then we started virtual schooling. Started the Florida Virtual School that every family, in whole or in part, could choose a virtual school. We decided in 2003 you could not go from 4th grade to 5th grade if you could not pass the standard. We would hold you back, and then we would put you in intense reading programs until you could pass. The exciting information is that the ones that were held back were outperforming the ones who went on, even if they had the standard to go on, all the way through the 7th grade. We started universal pre-K for the youngsters. Harvard came out with a study that said the A+ is working. That was Harvard. We finally surpassed the national average for the first time ever in Florida's history. We surpassed all of our peer states. Florida is ranked 2nd in the world in reading. In 2011, we chose not to just compare ourselves to the other 49 states. We chose to separate ourselves from the United States and match our scores against the world, second only to Hong Kong. First among peers, outperforming the nation. Those were choices. That's public policy. They weren't all popular. They're still not all popular. But what's the school for? It was our choice that after 3 decades of falling into the abyss and only celebrating how much more we were spending, that the outcome is what mattered. So, from 92, we were 4th among our peers, we now became 1st. For anyone who will choose, which I hope that you'll consider, this path of being more deeply involved in public policy, I wish you could have also seen the nature of the debates that went on through each one of those years, the same debates that are going on now in Tallahassee. Pretty ferocious, pretty tough. But what will ultimately matter is the outcome. Last slide. By the way, we use 4th grade reading because it's the one that will set by most studies whether or not you're going to be an achiever in any other subject area down the road. So that's why this has been the focus. Okay, so here we all are again. This would have been just as if we put it before. Now the axis is spending per student, and performance is now on the x-axis. So if this, take off what the slide's about, if I were to say to you, best outcome at lowest possible cost for your company, everybody would say, could you put me down here in this corner? I want the best outcome at the lowest possible cost. I'll take all the other precious resources and deploy it in a way that we also have an issue. But for heaven's sakes, don't end up over here. Low performance, high cost. So now I'm just going to put this in motion. Here we go, 1992. Going backwards as you saw before. Then each one of those policies begin to now start to kick in. But look where we're at on the price points. The nation is moving up. There it is. We were here. The National was here. Public policy, a lot of determination, a lot of tough choices. Here you are. Among our peers, we went from first, as I already covered this, to number one. Here's the impressive part. The improvement over that period of time, the nation moved 7 points, Florida moved 19. It was the second best move of any of the 50 states on national standard. We couldn't fix this thing. We couldn't rig the outcome. That's the measure. So it's pretty exciting stuff to see that where we've been able to. Now, if I had thrown up in a second, I will throw up all the others, toss up all the others, and you'll see how it looks. The size of your circle represents the improvement in your performance over time. Pretty impressive. So when you think about, again, going back to the start of the conversation, how do you create the conditions in the environment that will attract capital, that people believe this is the place that their dreams can come true? How do you create the environment that learning matters, intellectual capital will prevail? That's where innovation comes. That's where creativity comes. That's where you outperform people for the long haul comes.